Hello, my name is Alex Iles and welcome to Hadrian's Wall, not far from Black Cart's turret. And today in this episode we're going to look at the construction of the wall, its elements, and tell a few stories about those parts as well. So Hadrian's Wall, there's two theories about its construction. That it was started in AD 120 and took about 3 to 4 years to complete, with a war in Britain in the middle of that. And the second theory is that it was started around about AD 122, took about 6 years, it was completed about AD 128. So those are the two main competing theories. On the first theory, they suggest that maybe only 3,000 to 5,000 soldiers were used in it, because the fact the legionaries would have had other jobs around Britain, and so they would have been involved in the construction of public buildings, as policemen, all those other sort of jobs around Britain as well. Whereas the more commonly held theory, the second theory, suggests that the wall was built by 15,000 soldiers, 3 legions, the 2nd, the 6th and the 9th, and the 2nd, the 6th and the 20th legion, all up here in northern Britain. I personally err more towards the first theory, but again, it's all down to various different archaeologists and what the evidence suggests. Now, when we're looking at the construction of Hadrian's Wall, it wasn't the same all the way along the wall. The wall had different widths and different construction methods. So there were two different widths. There is the broad wall, which is seen more commonly more in the east of Hadrian's Wall, and that was about 2 meters and 80 centimeters wide. Then there was the narrow wall, which is common throughout the central section, and that was about 2 meters and 27 centimeters, and it's also from Newcastle going out to North Tyneside towards Segedunum Roman fort is also the narrow wall as well. Then on top of that as well, from wall mile 49 onwards to wall mile 80, it was originally built as a turf wall. So it was around about a 6-meter base, which gives an estimate of about 3.5 meters of height, with a wooden palisade in front of it. On top of that as well, there were around about 240 structures built into the wall as well, from mile castles to turrets to bridges. All of these things put as a part of it. And in total, 3.7 million tons of stone were estimated to be used in the total elements of Hadrian's Wall by the time it was finished. So that gives you an idea of the sense of how huge this construction was. Over the course of the wall, it was changed and edited, and by the time of Marcus Aurelius, the wall had been fully upgraded to stone, and then from there it was constantly repaired and added over time, with emperors like Septimus Severus repairing the wall, and then other emperors adding to it as well and changing the format, as well as the soldiers here as well, making it work for them throughout the Roman period, until eventually, when the Roman government left Britain, the post-Roman period, we see a lot of the wall being reused in the Dark Ages by native Britons, or, well, Romano-Britons, as these people would have seen themselves as Roman too. So starting off on the component parts of the wall, just to my left here, this would have been the berm. It would have been 6 meters wide, roughly maybe 2 meters high, and as you came from the north and came towards the wall, you'd have to get over this earthen mound before you even got to the wall itself. Coming along here now, we next have the wall ditch. Now this is 8 meters wide and 2.7 meters deep, and this would have been quite a barrier before you even got to the wall, because you would have to get down through this V-shaped ditch, which would have been quite an obstacle against you getting towards the wall. So a sharp V-shaped ditch right here, and you can see over time it's collapsed in, plants have grown in, new organic materials built up, so you can, even though it's filled in to an extent, you can still see the rough outline of what the Romans built here in northern Britain. Now coming out the other side, we have the wall itself. So you've come over the berm, you've gone through the wall ditch. Here you now hit a 4 to 6 meter high stone built wall. Now while the wall was constructed, the front face of the wall would have been wonderful Roman dressed stone, and it would have looked very impressive, very beautiful from the outside. When they built this, they then had the core of the wall, which was made of boulders and clay, and so you'd have wet clay poured in over boulders, and that would dry together to finish the wall. If you look here today, it's been consolidated, which is an archaeological term meaning repaired. And so they've built this so that this has been built by historians and archaeologists so that today we can enjoy Hadrian's Wall. We can look at it, walk alongside it and see it even into the modern period. And it's been repaired with modern construction materials like concrete. So this isn't how the Romans would have done it. There's also theories that the wall would have been whitewashed and painted as well, because there's evidence of plaster, whitewash and paint being discovered as people have looked at Hadrian's Wall and done archaeology around the place. So it would have been quite impressive and seen from quite a long distance away. Following on from this as well, the back of the wall would have also had wonderful dressed stone as well. So you've got dressed stone at the front, boulders and clay in the middle, and then dressed stone at the rear. And Hadrian's Wall over its period did actually fall in some locations, it did get damaged and so it's repaired, and we see limestone mortar being used in other locations to actually repair the wall. Along the top of the wall they think there would have been battlements or crenellations because they look at other artwork and depictions throughout the rest of the empire, things like Trajan's column, which is roughly contemporary to Hadrian's Wall, and so you can draw parallels with that as well to get an idea of how Hadrian's Wall might have looked during the Roman period. Also things like the Rudge Cup, which was discovered and have the names of western forts on Hadrian's Wall, also shows crenellations along the top of it, so we can draw some parallels with that too. There would have also possibly been a fighting platform or a walkway across the top of the wall, which meant the soldiers could move from the various turrets and mile castles and forts all the way along the wall. Then roughly about 18 meters behind the wall, though in some locations it's much further, there would have been the vallum, and the vallum was 35 meters wide. You'd hit another berm, so another mound just behind here, and it was 2 meters high. You'd climb up that mound and then suddenly you'd go into a dip because the vallum was a steep-faced, flat-bottomed ditch, and so you would drop then 5 meters down into the vallum. You've gone up 2 meters on the berm, there's a 3-meter ditch, you fall down there, and then there's a 2-meter high berm on the other side, so you've got to try and scale 5 meters up. And that just shows you how formidable that was, because you've managed to get over all the other obstacles. Somehow you've got over Hadrian's Wall, you hit the vallum, and I think that's where most people would have been stopped, because if you've dropped down there, there's a good chance you're physically injured, and that's just not going to help you getting out at all. And so probably the Roman soldiers could have walked along the top of the berm and then just quickly disposed of you or just left you down there, and so that would be pretty horrendous in some way. There's some debate as to what the vallum's purpose was, and they actually reckon it was probably to mark where the military controlled zone was, but it also could have equally been defence, because the northern Britons were not fully subjugated and they did revolt a number of times against the Romans, so you'd want to protect to the south just as much to the north. So altogether, I really hope I've been able to show you something of Hadrian's Wall and its various component parts all the way here across the northern frontier, because it's not just about the wall that you can see on my left hand side and behind me, it's also about the berms, the ditches, the vallum. All of this comes together to make this incredible frontier that we know as a UNESCO World Heritage Site today. But that just shows why it was so successful, so formidable, and why it was such an important part of the defences of Roman Britain throughout its history. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video and that you'll join me again for another video in the future. Until then, stay safe and well, and thank you for joining us.